Welcome to our kitchen. Today we prepare an ancient Roman venison stew and a Puls made with Spelt, one of the staple foods of ancient Rome. We start with the ingredients. We need venison, mustard, made with mustard seeds, honey, olive oil, and white wine vinegar. Then we need onions, garum, pine nuts, dates, and the spices, long pepper and lovage. And then oregano. We harvested our oregano in summer and dried it to preserve it for winter. Drying was the most common way to preserve aromatic herbs, but ancient Romans also kept them in brine and vinegar. Then for the Puls we need spelt and milk. First we grind in the mortar long pepper and lovage. This recipe is part of the Cookbook conventionally attributed to Apicius, in which there are several game recipes, including 8 venison recipes. The Latin author Varro, in the 1st century before the Common Era, describes in his agricultural treatise De Leporaria enclosures in which ancient Romans kept wild animals. The word leporaria derives from lepus, that means air, but the leporaria were also used to keep several other animals, for example deer, fallow deer, wild boar, rabbit and dormouse. Indeed, ancient Romans also hunted those animals in the wild. We add the pine nuts. Pine nuts were frequently used as thickeners in ancient Roman cuisine. They are the most used nuts in Apicius recipes. Then we mince 1 onion. Pliny and Dioscorides report that ancient Mediterranean populations used 2 main kinds of onions. One elongated that was called pallacana and included several varieties of shallot. The other, big and round, was called capitata, which means with a big head. There were both red and white varieties of cepa capitata. We pit and mince 1 date. Ancient Romans used dates, both fresh and dried. Dates were a common sweetener, as well as raisins and prunes. We add in the mortar the onion, date and dry oregano. Ancient Roman cuisine used many aromatic herbs. Oregano was one of the most common. Oregano and lovage's flavors enhance each other. Indeed, in the cookbook conventionally attributed to Apicius, we find lovage in almost all the recipes with oregano. Now the recipe calls for mustard. We'll show you how to make a quick and simple ancient Roman mustard. First, we grind the mustard seeds. Ancient Roman cooks bought mustard already prepared. Indeed, we find this mustard recipe not in a cookbook, but in an agronomy treatise, written in the 3rd century by the agronomist Palladius, entitled Opus Agriculturae. Then we add honey, white wine vinegar and olive oil. A few months ago we made a video with 2 ancient Roman mustard recipes. You find the link in the description below. Now we add a bit of mustard to the sauce, then a bit of honey, garum, vinegar and olive oil. We used a sweet mustard, but not all ancient Roman mustards were sweet. If you choose another kind of mustard, add one more date or a bit more honey to the sauce. Garum was an ancient Mediterranean fish sauce. A few sources describe its production. It was made with fish and salt, sometimes adding aromatic herbs or spices. Some types of garum were made in the same way as modern-day Southeast Asian fish sauces. Today a few producers recreate garum, but you can also use a Southeast Asian fish sauce to substitute it. Or if you prefer, just 1 or 2 pinches of salt. We pour the sauce in a pan and dilute it with a bit of water. Then we add the venison. Cook for 2 hours, adding water if the sauce thickens too much. The recipe describes the sauce without telling us how to cook the meat. Because of the similarities with other recipes from the same cookbook, we chose to make a cupadia, which is a stew prepared with meat cut in small pieces and cooked with the sauce. In this cookbook there is a cupadia prepared with Puls, the other recipe we prepare today to accompany the venison stew. Very similar plates are still traditional in Italy. Usually we pair venison stew with polenta. To prepare the Puls, we boil the spelt in salted water for at least 1 hour. It's important to overcook the spelt until the grains begin to break. Pliny in the 1st century reports that Puls was a staple food typical of the Italic populations, since before the introduction of bread. Puls was similar to a Greek dish used also in ancient Rome, that in Latin was called polenta. When the spelt is overcooked and has absorbed all the water, we add the milk, stirring frequently, and cook for another 45 minutes, adding hot milk anytime the spelt begins to dry or stick to the pot. The main difference between polenta and Puls is that polenta was prepared with milled barley, sometimes adding other ingredients, whereas Puls was made with overcooked grains of millet, spelt or wheat. For more information about barley polenta, check out the link of our video in the description below. To bring out the flavor of this venison cupadia, we chose to pair it with a simple Puls, following a recipe from Cato's De Agricultura. Apicius, as well as Cato, uses both spelt and wheat to make Puls. Indeed, Apicius uses more often spelt. We chose a spelt which pairs perfectly with a venison stew. We serve the Puls with the stew. This flavorful venison stew is the perfect pairing with a Puls, the most typical staple food of ancient Romans and the other Italic populations. If you're interested in ancient foods and flavors, or you're just looking for unusual and delicious recipes, Please subscribe our channel.